So, last week, of course, the big story, because it took effect on Friday, was the fact that minimum wage in this province went up to $16.60 an hour. And of course, if you're on tips, we're just above, I think $13.30 is the new level for people who are working, making tips. And I think the takeaway from that was, when you break down the numbers, even with the, $16.60 an hour, you're not even close to being able to live above what we would ordinarily call the poverty line. A couple of different institutes coming out with studies. We wanted to look at one of them. Eve-Lyne Couturier is a researcher at the progressive think tank IRIS, pointing out a couple of things in this. Number one, about the poverty line, and number two, where we would need to be. So let's start with that. First of all, Eve-Lyne, thank you for being with us today. With respect to minimum wage, okay, what was your reaction with the think tank to this level of now going up to $16.60? What would that change? What would allow you to do, if anything?
Well, when we compare the minimum wage, you need to figure out to what you're comparing it. And if we think that minimum wage makes it possible to work full-time and get out of poverty, unfortunately, it's not the case. Since 2015, at IRIS, we calculate what we call the living income, and that's the baseline where you are able to make ends meet and have enough money for having a decent life, nothing fancy, but decent, get out of poverty. And when you work full-time at minimum wage, like $16.60, you make only 66% of what we call the living income. So it's not, the gap is there. And what is more preoccupying is that the gap is widening year after year for at least 4 years. So past years, it was possible to make a bigger chunk of the living wage, but living income and minimum wage, but it's less and less the case, because the biggest expense in a budget for people who are living in precarity, living around the poverty line, is housing and food and transportation, and those expenses are increasing at a much higher rate than general inflation.
Yeah, which obviously makes you scratch your head wondering what the government can do, what anybody can do. If we can just break down, I know you broke this down for single parents, you broke it down for individuals living alone, for families of four. Can you just quickly run down some of those numbers? So if you're a single parent, or rather a single person here living, how much do you need to be able to live above that level that you described?
So it depends where you live in Quebec. It ranges from $33,000 to $45,000. $33,000 is for Trois-Rivières. It's the least expensive city in Quebec, and the most expensive is for Sept-Îles, where you need a car to be able to answer your needs. And for Montreal, it's on the higher level. It's at $41,600. So it's less than Sept-Îles, but not that much. That's for a single person. For a single parent with one kid, it ranges from $46,000 to $59,000, and again, it's between Trois-Rivières and Sept-Îles. And Montreal is at $55,800.
Okay.
And for a family of 2 adults, 2 kids, it ranges from $75,000 to $89,000, but this time it's not Sept-Îles where it costs the most, but it's Montreal. So Montreal is the most expensive city for a family of 2 adults and 2 kids.
So how did Montreal, at least in this particular category, become the most expensive? Is it housing? What else would it be that affects that?
It's really housing. In Sept-Îles, it's more expensive in Sept-Îles because we expect the 2 adults and 2 kids to have 2 cars to be able to answer their needs. In Montreal, we think that for a modest but decent life, it's possible for that kind of family to have only 1 car and to rely on public transit. But the cost of the housing is so expensive that having a 3-bedroom apartment in Montreal is the same as having a second car in Sept-Îles.
Wow. So as I said off the top, you try to do the right thing. You make it a little bit more. You realize that the little bit more really is not going to make much of a difference. What's the solution here? Is there one?
Well, what is interesting by doing the living income is that doing the living income means that you need to ask questions about the expenses and then the revenue. So there are 2 ways to help people get out of poverty. One way is to give money to people, raising the minimum wage, giving more benefits, and that is something that really helps people living in poverty. That is what we did during the pandemic, and we really managed to decrease the number of people living in poverty. That was really helpful. But if we only do that and we don't work on the expense side, why is things so expensive? Why are we seeing the living income increasing more rapidly than inflation? Then the solution is only partial. So we need to work also on the main categories where we see high expenses. So that is housing, food, and transportation. And one example that I like to give is that many years ago, we decided as a society to subsidize childcare. And that makes it in Quebec is one of the least expensive childcare in the whole Canada, in the whole of North America. And by doing that, we managed to help people not only around poverty level, but also the middle class and higher revenue families to be able to afford childcare. And we could do the same kind of thing with housing, with transportation, with food, with groceries. Then we managed to decrease the living income, and then it's easier for people to get to the living income.
But someone might ask, how realistic is that, right? I mean, it works in daycare. Could it work in those other areas that you pointed out?
Well, we have seen that some cities have decided to invest in public transit, and they managed to decrease the living income for their city. In our 7 cities where we calculated the living income, where we calculated year after year, it's pretty stable. But in the city of Valleyfield, they decided to put a public transit, and now we believe that people can have one less car. Montreal is one of the most expensive cities where we have public transit, so it's possible to decrease that. It's possible also to invest more to make sure that the public transit covers the whole island with a good schedule for everybody to be able to get to where they need. With food, we're talking more and more about public groceries and to ask ourselves, why do groceries cost so much while the people cannot afford it, while the people who work in the agriculture or the producing of food are not making a living? And in housing, we need to think about out of market. It's not normal that people make so much profit on housing while people are not able to afford a house that is decent. Mm-hmm. So there are solutions there. We have a strong movement of cooperatives in Quebec. We need to focus on those solutions. And yes, we need to focus on those solutions as quickly as possible because people are not making ends meet right now.
Eve-Lyne, I thank you for the time. Very much appreciate it.
No problem. Have a nice day.
You too. All right. There, long way to go, I think, for that. And by the way, that number, $16.60 now, the minimum wage, it's estimated the same group thinks that in order for these people, single people now living alone, no family here, would need about $30 an hour for their disposable income to allow them to live with dignity and above the poverty line. $30 an hour.
The newest tracks. Let's go. New music. And the next big thing.
Always on the new music first.
Your first place to hear it all.
'Cause you gon' like it, love it, wanna play it twice. Playing now.
iHeart New Music. Your digital station for brand new drops, fresh finds, and tomorrow's bangers.
I think we need something new.
Discover iHeart New Music. Always fresh, always first. Stream now on the free iHeartRadio app.